Hi, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Absolute Bookkeeping Podcast. Today I'm joined by Claire. Claire, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business and the clients that you serve?
So my name is Claire Rulton, as you can see on the screen, and I have two accounts practices because I'm greedy. One called Absolute Accounts and Training, which is a general kind of practice accounts. It's been going 10 years. And then the other one, more recent, a new one, is Balance and Bliss, which is a niche accountancy firm, which specialises in health, beauty, and well-being. So both accounts practices, one a little bit older than the other. So both quite different clients in what we're servicing, but interesting nonetheless.
And how did you get into the industry? What was the trigger point that made you become part of this industry?
Well, it's a bit of a long story now. So I actually started off as a tea scientist,
Wow.
which is quite different. I worked for Unilever. So they own Lipton's and own PG Tips. I'm a big tea drinker, I'm not a coffee drinker. And did chemistry degree there, stayed there. And then whilst I was there, I did AAT. I studied AAT in the background, which is an amazing qualification. I really think AAT is a great route to get into accountancy. And then then I looked for a job and got a job in accountancy, and I've worked at some quite cool places, really. I've worked for Land Rover, and I've worked for the Duke of Bedford, which owns Woburn Safari Park and Woburn Abbey and Woburn Golf Club. So it's quite an interesting background. And then I went from working in industry to then opening practice.
Yeah. What
Covering
is
all
the
the
one?
bases.
Oh, wow. What is the one word that you would describe your relationship with technology in your business currently?
One word. Interesting is probably the word. Because that can mean all sorts of things. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, isn't it? And there's always constant developments with technology.
So let's talk about your favourites. So what is the app or software you simply could not run your business without?
It's fast becoming Engager at the moment, which is, I think it's talked about quite a lot since they launched. So we moved from another practice software to Engager. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't a big fan when I first started using it. With any new technology or any new sort of tech that you bring in, there's teething problems.
Yeah.
But now it's the first thing I open on my laptop. Come in. That's the first thing I open.
Yeah. And how did you discover it? Was it sort of a game changer from day one for you? Or like you said, it was a slow burn, and you've obviously said that you didn't really like it at the start, but now you wouldn't be running your practice without it.
It was a slow burner because I think once you're indoctrinated into any software that's in all of your processes, you don't have to think about it, you can just do it. I think it's very easy actually to get kind of tied into not changing software because of that hurdle, that learning curve that you have to go through. But I think if you want to be the best accountant's practice and you want to kind of keep with the times, you have to, and you kind of have to just get over it. Unfortunately, I always end up changing my account software at the worst time of the year. I always go for it in January, which is, don't do that. Don't. That's awful. And I like pressure. I think that's probably why. So I go, end of year, let's change systems at the same time. So that probably added to why it wasn't quite my favourite when I was moving to it.
So what problems did it solve for you and your clients? What's the key problems it solved?
Communication, I guess, in the way some of the automations work. They're very intuitive. Yes, you have to set them up, but once they're set up, I like how customizable they are for each task. I also like, I'm not going to mention the other software management systems, but some of them you end up with thousands of emails in your inbox. There's not an easy way to get rid of them. So you spend a lot of time getting rid of them rather than doing the work. And with Engaging, you don't have that. So you do a task, for example, I was doing P11Ds actually the other day, so you don't do them all the time, but you have your process, it automatically will ask for the information, great, tick box. And then once you've done the P11Ds, it confirms the P11Ds and it tells them that you've uploaded the files, etc. So it's just nice and easy having those stage processes in place.
Can you talk us through how you use it in your day-to-day workflows? Because obviously that's a key part of your workflow, as you've just mentioned, with your P11Ds. So how do you use it in your key tasks during the day?
So I will log in, and I guess other people do it slightly different. What I like is there's several different views that you can have. So there's a Kanban view or a list view. So depending on how you like to view your information, there's already a difference.
Yeah.
Then you can you can customize that view. So it isn't just a set view for everybody. And so you can decide, do I set this view up by task, by person responsible, by deadline, by period end, by priority? It's all that customization. So when I log on and look at it, it's exactly how I want it.
Yeah.
And so I can go on. At the moment, I'm doing lots of self-assessments at the moment because I don't want to leave them to the end of the year. And I'm trying to get a lot done before summer holidays and people kind of change their focus on what they're looking at. So that's what comes up, what ones am I waiting for information on? What are the queries? Which ones am I waiting for signing? And I like that visual representation. And at the top, it will say this number needs signing. So that makes it very easy to chase and to see without doing anything. It's just an instant visual representation. So that's how I use it.
Fabulous. Are there any clever automations or tips you've set up which will make your life easier? What tips and automations have you used within it? So you've just said, obviously, it sends automatic reminders.
So there's automatic reminders already built into the system for the general things. But it's about making some of those customizable and specific for you. And also what I like is if you link it to your accounting software that you use as a practice to bill your clients, that integration is quite clever because when you're within a client, you can click on your account software and it'll tell you what invoices you've raised. And you can also at a glance see whether they owe you any money. So if you're doing a self-assessment and you don't want to send that till they've paid you, you can instantly see that rather than going into your account software. Now, to start with, when you only have a few clients, you know whether they've paid you. But as you get bigger, you can't keep all of that information in your head. Or if you get paid via Go Cardless, you don't actually see the individual payments. So you lose track of that. So being able to see instantly whether they've paid or not is really helpful. And you can also, on any task, automate a billing point. So that's not so useful for your company accounts and things like that because that happens automatically. But a task that you don't do as often, let's say, just trying to think about, if I'm closing a company or some little task that you don't do, you can automate a billing point in there to make sure that you don't forget to bill them, which is great.
Has it helped you scale or save time or even keep your sanity while running your businesses?
I don't think anything helps keep my sanity. I think my clients, I lose that on a daily basis, depending on which one I'm talking to. Yes, it's definitely streamlined things. And whereas to start with, I couldn't rely on certain things because I hadn't set it up properly. Now it's set up properly. And they always say this, you have to take that time to set up things properly. But once it's set up properly, I now can rely on those deadlines being correct and that the workflows will work. So yes, it has saved me time. It has saved me that stress, which is important.
Are there any common mistakes you've seen other users use when using, obviously, this software that you probably can just dispel for them?
The only mistake is not using it to its full capacity, like because you can very easily just go on and use it just as a tool to see which tasks have been done. But it's about it's the customization. If you don't
Yeah,
customize it, you're actually losing a big percentage of what it can do for you. So it's that part that's very easy to miss, because although the guys at Engage are really good in that they've got loads of videos and that requires you being proactive.
yeah,
And sometimes it's quite hard to get ideas as to what to do. But if you join the Facebook group, or if you join the Wednesdays at 7:30 every week, it will give you ideas, and then
yeah.
you know how to customize it yourself. So it's making sure you use that part of it.
Fabulous tip. If you had a magic wand and you could change any part about it, would you improve anything or would you leave it as it is?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Sorry, the doorbell's just going. Typical, probably it's on Amazon delivery. Um, I would have to think about that one. There's not anything off the top of my head that I go and think, oh, actually, yes, there is. There is something.
Okay.
So with the engagement letters,
Yeah.
whereas the other software I used, when you updated a job, so let's say you had a task on bookkeeping or payroll, it automatically updated the letter of engagement.
Yeah.
And it doesn't in Engager. It doesn't automatically update. You have to go in and physically regenerate it. And when you
Yeah.
regenerate it, it overwrites the one that you've already got in there. So
Oh,
I would like it automatically to have any letters of engagement stored within the client's folders.
yeah.
And then it automatically to prompt you, oh, you've changed that service. Do you want to regenerate a letter of engagement? Because I think that could be missed then, you sending out that letter of engagement. So yeah, that's the one thing.
Would you recommend it to anybody in our industry to use? I know on a lot of forums, a lot of people use spreadsheets when they start up or simpler versions. Would you say is a key part of actually investing in proper practice management from the beginning before you actually scale?
It is. It's a lot easier if you do it that
Yeah,
way. I use spreadsheets. And although, do you know what? When I used spreadsheets, I didn't miss any deadlines. I knew where I was at, but it's not very easy to scale.
yeah,
You know, with the spreadsheets you're using, there's not formulas that can really go wrong. So, you know, they worked really well. But if you are scaling,
yeah,
this is a no-brainer. I think what puts people off is the cost, isn't it? Um, But if you evaluate the cost versus the time and treat it like you would your clients and what you would say to them,
yeah.
then actually, even if you don't use Engager, using any kind of practice management software is a game changer if you want to grow, I would say.
Have you used any other tools or apps to supercharge Engager? Have you like linked it? I know they have a few integrations. Have you sort of optimized the use of those?
Yeah, so we do our anti-money laundering, we use Zama, and that
Yeah,
integrates really well. I like that you don't have to put the data in twice.
yeah,
Which is always good. You know, we have this Substack, don't we? And we end up duplicating data. I'm looking forward to the TaxCalc Engager integration because I use TaxCalc. So to not have to put that data in twice will
yeah,
be amazing. I think that will be, I think we'll start to see things in October, but there's
yeah,
not going to be a full integration straight away. I imagine it's next year before we see a proper full integration, because there's so many things that are different about those two systems.
yeah,
To make them work is going to be quite a lot of planning. And I know Johan wouldn't release it until he's done all the testing and is completely
yeah,
happy with it. So those two, and then we also link our practice,
yeah,
where we do our invoicing to it as well. So
yeah,
they're the ones we do. And then you've got HMRC and Companies House, which you also integrate to it. If you didn't, that's a little bit silly. Um, and I really like with if you, so let's say you need to get authorization for corporation tax,
mhm,
you can do all of that within the system.
yeah,
And it will also update the system. So you can download from HMRC your list of authorized clients, upload it to Engager,
yeah,
and it will then tick them off automatically, which is good because otherwise, again, you've got two systems, HMRC and Engager, and they may not be exactly the same, which
yeah.
irritates me. I like I like it all agreeing.
Yeah. Okay, so apart from Engager, what are your other 3 top go-to apps in your tech stack? What's your 3 other favourites?
TaxCalc would be the other one, which is why, for me, the fact that they're getting engaged is what they said,
Yeah,
is massive for me, because although with FreeAger and QuickBooks Zero, you can now do accounts in those
yeah,
softwares, because my clients have different software, I want mine all in one.
yeah,
So for me, it's TaxCalc. And then we use MoneySoft, which actually is really value for money, I think, in terms of payroll software.
yeah,
So again, we don't use the QuickBooks Free. We don't use their payroll. We use MoneySoft. And MoneySoft, TaxCalc, and Engager are our 3 everyday apps that we're on all the time.
perfect. And talking about these apps, how often do you review them or update your tech stack? I mean, obviously, do you review them if you find a problem, or do you periodically review them anyway?
Don't specifically set down a review. I don't have a date in the diary. I don't have a task. I think if you go to events like AccountX, like Fab, like the Digital Accountancy Show, if you're involved in forums, it
Yeah,
kind of happens organically. Maybe I should do it more scientifically, but I think you hear about apps because you're
yeah,
involved in that space. So therefore, then they're on your mind, and then you'll
yeah,
go to a show, get a demo of it, and then go from there, really. It's very easy, though, to get pulled in to just changing just for the sake of it. And it's very easy to, I'm very guilty of the shiny
yeah,
penny and wanting it. And yeah, that's why I changed things in January. It's a bit silly like that. But yeah, I think just being involved in those spaces where there are the conversations is the key thing, so
yeah,
that you're aware of any apps that are coming out. Then you can decide what you do about it, whether it's useful to you,
yeah,
and whether it's useful to your clients.
yeah.
There's lots of apps that you might save you 5 minutes, but is it actually useful? Is it what the clients want? And that's different for everybody.
It is. Have you ever had a software disaster, and if so, how did you resolve it?
I haven't had one that I've moved to that's been a disaster,
Yeah.
um, because I think you kind of have to do a bit of research before you move to them. The the only disasters I've ever had, to be honest, are with HMRC.
Oh,
Which I'm not sure we
yeah,
have a choice about using their software.
no,
And that is where I've been locked out of being
yeah,
able to log in. So what I would recommend is, that all of your team members have appropriate access.
yeah,
And I guess if you've got sole traders listening, sole practitioners, um, have a backdoor.
yeah,
So even if you haven't got clients, so even if you haven't got other accountants or bookkeepers that work with you, have a separate login for Government Gateway,
yeah,
so that if yours gets logged, you can log in via that separate Government Gateway. They don't check names or anything like that, so they're not the ID. So yeah, I just have 2, even though I've got people that work for me, because of that happening. Because if you get locked out, you won't get fined because you can prove that you've locked out. However, do your clients understand that? They're not
no,
going to understand that they're getting fines, penalties. We already know this. They get that, and you say that shouldn't have happened. I'll
yeah,
speak to HMRC, but it leaves a negative taste in the mouth. I think even if it's not your fault at all, so just make sure you have that backup system. And the same with any of your software. Make sure that you have access to it.
yeah,
I've got time to say, I know somebody with Engager, for example, make sure you've got 2-factor authentication on,
yeah,
because there was another accountant local to me that somebody fraudulently logged into Engager because they didn't have 2-factor authentication on, and sent an
yeah,
email to all of their clients.
yeah.
So be
That's
careful.
very, very good advice. And that's very good advice. Now, we're talking about overwhelm. So what is your advice for those in our industry who feel overwhelmed by all the software choices out there? Do you have any top tips and things like that for them? Because obviously it can be overwhelming of what decisions to make and what route to do.
It is. I think don't try and do everything at once.
Yeah.
It's really tempting to just do everything, and you can't.
No.
You cannot do everything at once. Have a plan for how long everything's going to take and then double it, because it will always take longer. You know, everyone says it's really easy to change. It isn't. It isn't. There'll be things that aren't the same. You'll be learning. You'll realize you should have done something differently. So take your time and just implement one change,
Yeah.
one change at a time.
Perfect. Now we're going on to the quick fire round towards the end. So iPhone or Android?
Oh, Android,
Xero, QuickBooks or Sage?
QuickBooks,
Coffee or tea?
T.
What is the one piece of tech or business wisdom you wish you'd learned at the beginning rather than now?
Invest early in the software,
Okay. And finally,
definitely.
my final question for you today is, what app do you think is underrated and deserves a little bit more love?
Moneysoft, probably, from a payroll point of view. It doesn't get talked about because it's not got all the fancy tech associated with it. But you know what? It does the job, and it's really cost effective. So yeah, and their support's really good actually. Whenever I've messaged them, but no one really talks about it.
Oh, that's brilliant. So we shared a little love for Moneysoft today. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And that concludes my little podcast episode today. So thank you, Claire, for joining me. That's been really insightful. And I love your passion for the Engager and the TaxCalc engagements. That's fantastic. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.